All right. Okay, so let's come back to our meeting, please. Yeah, so we're going to continue with number 2 and have department heads update us on Butte Fire. I bet you Mary wants to go first.
I'm shocked.
You
I
caught
usually go before the boys.
you caught him. You caught him over there fumbling around.
Yeah, you felt bad. That'll be the day. Hey, I'm older. I know. I can call you boys. I can. Good afternoon, Mary Sawicki, Director of Health and Human Services. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the outreach that we have done in the last week. At the outstations, the pluses that you have on the reports, in River Flat, we saw 6 people, West Point, another 49 people, and Mountain Ranch, 51. And I will give cumulative totals in the next report. What was listed here as the initials, they didn't put last week's in, so I will give the cumulative totals at the next meeting. So far to date, though, I will tell you the total number of attempted visits have been 326. So that is a good number so far to date. And I listed out in the report all the different things that we've given out, which are cleaning supplies, sleeping bags, blanket, pillow, shoes, socks, guest cards, undergarments, tools, propane, tents, PG&E tote bags, batteries, flashlights, dog and cat foods, the usual kind of thing. In response, so far we've been working on the veterans in particular, contacted 45 of them, most of them in person. In Glencoe, there were 3, Moke Hill, 14, you're welcome, Mountain Ranch, 23, and Railroad Flats, 5. In the area of the donation management program, the Resource Connection now has hired a donation manager who will take care of the warehouse so that Kelly can get back to her full-time job, which is running the crisis center, and also her other store, as well as doing the administrative work for the Resource Connection in general. Under mental health, they've contacted everyone on the FEMA list with the exception of 2 who are left to be contacted, so we consider that to be very good. On the workshops, the last workshop was in West Point. They only had 1 person there. The next workshop will be in Railroad Flats on November 9th, which is 4 to 6. And they are still trying to find and schedule for Moke Hill, as well as look at finding an office in Moke Hill. They're having some difficulty with that. This week, there'll be a training of case managers by FEMA for mental health workers. It will be on the 5th and 6th. After that, they will be picking up and doing routes out in the impacted areas. They'll be taking over for human services. If you remember correctly, the 326 attempted contacts, of which we were successful on almost all of them, except for those in which the science and police do not come here, or there were locked gates. The mental health workers will now continue in those routes forward. And so that'll be a good thing. So we will continue to do that. So with that, that concludes my report. Any questions?
Question, Chair. Mary, do you plan more of the classes or programs in regards to kind of that grieving process, loss, et cetera, that you had been doing? Do you plan for more of those through the holiday season and things along that line?
Absolutely. Yeah, the holiday season's one of our biggest ones.
Okay.
So sure. The issue is that we'll probably do it in relationship to splitting time, though, because of having to do double duty right now.
Okay.
Mary, have you reached out to, church groups that have still got a bunch of stuff out there that's collected?
I have talked to them, and I talked to them last week, and they are already working on eliminating those down themselves. I asked them if they wanted any help and assistance, and they said that they were already working on those. I also talked with them about, did they want any help and assistance as well, because Kelly Figueroa does indeed have a regular plan with them, but they said that they already had some plans going forward. So,
Okay.
as I said in my last week, that I would do that, and I had.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to make a comment. Mary shared with me yesterday, we were talking a lot about people that were out in tents during the storm event, and so we were kind of dealing with that this weekend. But Mary also stated, we had this discussion after our meeting yesterday, that her group has actually been out there in contact with all of those people as well. So I know that you kind of stated it, but I just wanted to reinforce that because that's very important.
Yes,
So thank you.
and when we went out and talked to people about, the realism about the weather, et cetera, people informed us that they were well aware of it and that they were determined to stay where they were at. Last night, the Red Cross opened the town hall. They only had 2 people come. One was from our local area here, was not from the impacted area. The other person did come from the impacted area, but said they actually had been staying with friends, was going to be going back to staying with those friends. So we closed the shelter at noon today. Red Cross did. So,
Are you gonna, is there a plan to reopen one, maybe in Mountain Ranch if possible, in bad storm events?
I talked to Red Cross about that yesterday, and they said that that is not possible for a variety of reasons, that Mountain Ranch does not meet their criteria.
And so you have to do it in combination with Red Cross? The county can't operate one by itself?
Just to let you know, Health and Human Services normally does not operate shelters at all. We, in the past, our agreement under the county has been to open shelters until Red Cross gets there, and then Red Cross takes over the running of them. And that's because we have other obligations under the protection side, as well as during many storms, we have responsibilities. We have delivered propane during storms, water. We have, the governor's office calls us about making sure that the elderly are taken care of, and we have contacts with them. With the disabled, we have a whole lot of different other responsibilities, and you can only spread your people so far.
Okay. And the Red Cross doesn't like Mountain Ranch because of?
It doesn't meet their requirements. They have requirements on their buildings and the staffing of it. And so, perhaps if you'd like, I could have Debbie Calcott come and explain what those requirements are, if you'd like, at the next meeting.
Good to know. We've held meetings and they hold meetings there all the time, so.
Sure.
I'm not, and maybe they don't want to do it. I don't know, the community may not even want to do it, but it seems like it could be a good spot if they could.
I will have her come and explain about their requirements, and perhaps, you can take a dialogue from there.
Cool, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, Mary. Okay.
Jason Baitzer, Calaveras County Environmental Management Agency. Want to give an update on the debris removal process. The weather ceased our operations yesterday and today, but we are rolling out 20 teams tomorrow. So last week we ended up with 14 teams. Tomorrow we'll be starting out with 20 teams and ramping up our operations. Today, just the site, with the amount of moisture and stuff, they felt for safety reasons to cease operations today. We continue, we're working in the central and west end of Jesus Maria, Old Gulch, the Wendell Road area, and McCulmy Hill. We're also going to be expanding out, I find out this afternoon, the additional areas that we're going to be expanding out in. I know we're also in the Creation Way area as of last week to assist somebody who had a FEMA trailer placed prior to the debris being cleaned up. Tomorrow, speaking of the temporary housing, we're having a meeting just with building and my staff to make sure we're all on the same page with the temporary housing and that process. So when people come into our office or the building department office, we're speaking the same language and ensure the expedition of that approval process. So far, we've received 688 right of entry forms. We've had our first person who completed the self-certification process, and we're still completing the expedited cleanup process for the non-HAS sites, what I spoke about last week, the fire, the woodshed, the chicken coop sites where a structure was not lost, and basically what they have is green waste and metal recyclables, trying to expedite that cleanup process for them, working with Jeff in the landfill, and coordinating that effort so we know what the people are bringing down there, and it's not, they're not bringing down potential hazardous ash or other materials. So that seems to be working good. We've been denied entry to one site that was in our ROE program, and they've backed out, and they're going to go through the self-certification process. They may change their mind, but again, to reiterate, November 6th is our deadline for the ROE program. If people do come in within the following week, we'll accommodate them, but as we ramp up our teams and we sweep neighborhoods, it's hard logistically to go back to areas, you know, in December, January, after we've swept that neighborhood. And that's why as we increase our debris removal teams, that we are systematic and efficient in our processes, going from one property to the next and looking at logistics with that. As soon as we have to start jumping from one property to the next, it's not cost effective and it takes more time. I want to warn people too, as we increase teams, we figure about 6 dump trucks per site per day. So as we have 20 teams, that's 120 dump trucks on the road. That's a lot of dump trucks going through our main arteries, and we're coordinating with Jeff, with Public Works and his crews, and the Sheriff's Department, so they understand where we're operating, and just advise the public to use caution when they see the debris removal teams and the heavy equipment. Of course, public safety is our main concern as we go through this process and expediting the property cleanups. People may see teams performing site assessments. There's teams that are performing asbestos site assessments. We're seeing a lot of asbestos in the ash. Also, there's teams that are performing assessments looking at the total amount of debris on site at the property. So when the debris removal teams come in, they have an idea of what to expect ahead of time as far as total debris at the site. So we have some good flyers up in our office, also on the Butte Fire website and Facebook, who's who on my property, and also infographics explaining the process. So we're continuing to get sites cleared and also have analytical results, samples for those properties. Once the samples are taken, it usually is 5 to 7 day turnaround to get those analytical results back. We're trying to expedite it, but it does take time to perform the analytical on the metals. So, but as soon as we get that, we're forwarding that information to the building planning department, Public Works, and the assessor's office, so those people know we have the sites cleared and they're ready for whether it's a temporary trailer with that can be placed there, and or submit plans to Jeff White, building department. So that's where we're at. We also, I'm ramping up. I have a mutual aid worker here this week that's been assisting with the household hazardous waste. Department of Toxics is here. If people are going to go through the self-certification process, they will come out to your site and remove the household hazardous waste for free. That's the first step in the process. And this property owner can sign a one-page access agreement for that. So we'll be continuing to take those, and they can come to our office or go to the Butte Fire website to obtain that form. In addition, we're really trying to perform a lot of outreach as we get the rains, have concerns with private wells not being secure and surface water intrusion. We've developed right away an expedited certificate form for the well contractors to complete. And this was so they wouldn't have to come into our office and obtain a permit every time. But we know that there's 300 plus wells that have been impacted. And we want to make sure that if those people that maybe are moved away or haven't done anything, that we can start doing outreach and follow-up to them, so at least if they're not going to use the well, that they get it secure so we don't have surface water intrusion and contamination into that aquifer, and also public safety concern having that open hole. So that's another project that we're ramping up. Any questions?
A lot of activity.
How long is it taking you to do one site now?
One site, I mean, it all depends. On average, I would say a couple days. Some of the sites they were at, the Golden Spur was 5 days, depending on how much debris is at the site. There's site access issues, constraints that they're having, getting heavy equipment in, how much debris. So it all depends on the site, but say 2 to 2.5 days. So, and as we ramp up teams from meetings, it looks like as we get ramped up that we're hoping to clear 10 sites a day. So, and we're going to continue to ramp up next week. So we also have another class, November 9th, I believe, so another 40-hour HAZWOPER. So this will be our third class open to the public, and we plan on having a fourth class. So those dates will be posted on the website, and we continue to train local contractors, whether they're going to participate in the county state debris removal program or they want the training so they can be part of the self-certification process and remove debris for the homeowners.
How many local contractors have you signed up?
Oh, boy. Well, 50% of our crews are local contractors. So if you look at, we have 14 crews now and average of 12 people per crew. That's over, it's 168 approximately. So we're looking at least 80 contractors. Even the local contractors that were the union contractors, but didn't go through Sutton, that were maybe hired by another Sierra Mountain Construction, are still considered local, but they're union workers that maybe have been working in the Bay Area or in the Valley that are now working as part of this debris removal process. So we have local contractors that have taken the class, signed up, other local union workers that were working outside of the county that are now part of the debris removal process.
Sierra who?
Sierra Mountain Construction. So they're one of the subs under Sukit, along with Sutton. And Brad, yeah, and local contractors have been hired under Brad Sutton.
Chair, I have a question. Jason, you had told me a while ago that this class was also online, and people could take it online and they would be paying for it themselves if they could not get away to attend a class. If they go to the class, and I understand, then that fee is incorporated into your program and kind of no cost to the individual. Mm-hmm. Is there any way a class like this, if they did go online, that it could be waived under any of your programs, or?
So the class that's here is a CalRecycle contractor that's also helped performing the asbestos assessment. So they are on contract with CalRecycle. Mm-hmm. They do not have an online class. So okay. If that was to happen, that CalRecycle would have to go out to bid to an online provider in order to contract with whoever provides the online class.
Okay.
NES, who's providing this class, does not have an online version of it. I've checked because I need my 8-hour refresher.
Okay, all right.
So I've been trying to squeeze in the last couple of weeks, and I haven't found 8 hours to do that. So.
You can't buy 8 hours.
Yeah, no, that's what the online's good.
Chair, question for Mr. Belzer. How are we being influenced anymore by the OES state going out to bid for contractors?
We're still ramping up our operations. We should find out this Friday on the award of that bid, but I've been assured we have funding to continue our operations, and that's why we increased teams last week. We increased teams this week, and we'll continue to increase once the current contractor, Sukit, did bid on the job, and so once we find out, we'll have to, ensure, and I've been ensured that it's going to be a seamless transition, and I've been speaking loudly that it has to be a seamless transition, believe me.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Jeff Grovitz, Public Works. I'm going to start with the Butte Fire Recovery Task Force organization. The current one, I know that Supervisor Edson and Supervisor Wright have been at the area field office down in St. Charles, and they've seen this up on the board. But the major task teams, long-term recovery team task force, currently under Alan Sender, fairly new. Infrastructure Task Force, Jeff White for temporary housing and permanent housing. Health and Human Services under Mary Sawicki. Environmental Health Task Force under Jason Bozer. And Burn Area Recovery Task Force is under me. Under the Burn Area Recovery Task Force are two more sub-areas, one is which Watershed Recovery Program, and the second one which is Public Infrastructure Roadway Damage Recovery Program. So I'll touch on those. But we also have a wing here, a task force called Winter Storm Preparedness Task Force. That's under Sergeant Wade Whitney of the Sheriff's Department. So the last week and a half, there was a lot of work put into preparing for winter rain events coming to the county and their impacts, potential impacts on the fire area. To that, Public Works has prepared a list of 7 sites that we will be deploying sand stations, sandbag stations to, 5 of which are inside the burn area, 2 of which are outside the burn area in areas of historic flooding. We deployed 1 sand station in this last event up in Mountain Ranch, and we pushed up, I don't know, 4,000 or 6,000 sandbags for the use of the public and put that on the website, on the Twitter site, on the radio sites. All the outreach that we can possibly do, given the limited communication we have in the burn area. In addition, I also put together an exhibit of probable road closures and high stormwater events where I plan on closing roads. That would be hard closures in the event that we see high-intensity rainfall coming into the burn area where we know we will likely get flash flooding, and I don't want to risk any public safety. That's why I'm planning on doing deployment 2 days, if I can, 24 hours in advance of the event, with changeable message signs on 26 on Mountain Ranch Road to indicate flooding is coming, and then we will deploy the hard closures at specific locations. So that's available out of the PIO office, also on the internet site for the Butte Fire Recovery. Lastly, my road crews did a lot of work last week. We are branching now out from our major corridors onto some of the minor corridors, and we are attempting to hit those that have the most or the greatest number of residences unburned in the fire, where people are still living. So that is our next priority. We know that Doster Road could potentially become an outlet to San Andreas, and so we're doing a lot of work on Doster all the way out so we can maintain at least 1 lane in all events. And so I can talk a little bit more about that if you're curious in terms of order of roadways or what I'm doing. Again, as a reminder, I have 81 miles of road within the burn area. Okay, so moving on to the Burn Area Recovery Task Force, I'd like to start with the Road Damage Recovery Program. And the Road Damage Recovery Program is going to come in 2 major flavors. One is supported and funded, partially funded by FEMA, and it's called the Emergency Recovery Program, and that is for, I hate to use the word, but federal aid roads. Even though the county has not received federal aid roads, 5 of our roads within the burn area are considered federal aid roads because of not necessarily their width or their average daily traffic, but because they link residential areas to state highways, and they serve as major corridors or arteries in and out of our higher density population areas. Those roads would be Jesus Maria, Railroad Flat, Mountain Ranch, Sheep Ranch, Frico City. All other roads within the burn area are considered local roads, and they will be under a secondary program called the Public Assistance Program, which is jointly funded on a 75-25, 6.5% basis, 6.25% basis to the county for the remainder of those roads. The Public Assistance Program had the applicant briefing a week ago Wednesday, right here in the board chambers, to let us know what the structure and nature of that program is. And then the second major event that occurs on that program is the workshop where we actually begin sitting down with our counterparts on the Public Assistance Program with FEMA and Cal OES. For Public Works, that occurs tomorrow at 8:30, and included in that will be Rebecca Callan to help support that we are doing our paperwork correctly, that we can be audited in a defensible way, and that we have chargeable programs and accounting within the Public Works Department in which to charge our time that can then be directed towards matching funds. So that kickoff meeting occurs tomorrow. The next phase of that is me deploying our counterparts from Cal OES and FEMA into the field, looking at my list of projects. I have a long list of projects that include both roadways, some recovery in parks, for example, recovery to the community park in Mountain Ranch, recovery to facilities at the fairgrounds, including Gun Club Road, because it took a lot of beating during the suppression operations.
Jeff, I just wanted to make sure that when you're talking about specific work to be done on the ball field and the community park in Mountain Ranch, that you work with Bill Schmidt closely, because he's been basically in charge of that, and so he actually has a whole bunch of seed to replant the ball field out there, the outfield grass. So if you could just contact him, and you know who he is, Mountain Ranch Realtor.
Wasn't he the former owner of Mountain Ranch Realty?
No, he's the younger guy.
Oh, it's Stark? Okay.
No.
He's the one running around with shorts and a Hawaiian shirt on.
Yeah.
Aren't they all?
That's Bill.
Aren't they all Supervisor Edson?
It's the Mountain Ranch Realty.
Oh, Mountain Ranch Realty?
Yeah, so they just call their office there. He lost his house, so he's there most of the time.
Yeah, I think I actually met with him and his wife. His wife is a nurse? Yeah. Okay. I've met with them. Okay, as soon as I get the project approved, I will reach out to him and make sure he puts a value on that seed as a donation and cost recovery. Next I want to talk about watershed recovery. And then I'll get into some of the resources that I now have got mobilized for some of these programs. The watershed recovery is coming in various flavors. The first flavor of watershed recovery will be that watershed recovery adjacent to the county roads. That will stabilize storm drains. It will stabilize creek beds that are close to the roadbed surface that have a potential for overtopping and blocking our use of these roads. So that is moving ahead. I have sent a right of entry through County Council's office for review. It has been approved and is now being deployed. We sent out, I believe, 190 requests yesterday with additional ones today. And that right of entry is generic enough that I can use it for not only public right-of-way or adjacent private property to public right-of-way, but when we start deploying these other programs for watershed recovery on private land. The second flavor of watershed recovery is that recovery, those recovery operations on private land, and those come in a lot of different grant funding programs that are becoming more and more clear to me, and that's helpful. I think it's more and more clear to everyone. Just to give you an idea of what these look like, USDA NRCS has an emergency watershed protection program that I have mobilized, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more, and that is that's an exigent emergency program, which is again a 75, 25, 6 1/4 type of match for private property protection on private land. And I'll talk a little bit more about that because that program is rolling, and I will need to get it in front of you for approval very quickly. I'm hoping within the next week to 10 days, and I'm working with admin on that one. Another one is the USDA through NRCS, which is a program for large property owners whose properties have been damaged by the fire that were in some sort of natural resource production. So it would be trees, rangeland, grazeland, raising of farm animals, raising of crops. And there are a number of programs for those individual landowners. And NRCS has been outreaching to people ever since the beginning of the fire. And I've been talking to more and more of our larger landowners who are taking advantage of these programs, including the development of new wells for livestock, paving of roads that were damaged in the fire, logging to remove dead and burned trees, seed programs for rangeland restoration. So it's quite a wide-ranging program that is available to the public as long as they know about that. And so the contact for that, of course, is our NRCS office down in Jackson. Another program, which is brand new to this event and all events in California, is under the FMAG program called Hazard Mitigation. It's a $441,000 grant with a $147,000 match. And that program, well, it seems large. It was offered, and I thought long and hard about how I could utilize it where it would actually be effective. And after some back and forth with some of my experts that I count on for good advice, as well as regulatory agencies, as well as FEMA and OES, and then discussing these with the people offering this program, we've put together a proposal that we will bring in front of the board for approval for watershed recovery on private lands within the McCollum Hill Basin. And the reason that I selected that is it's about an 18,500 acre watershed that was burned. I would say 10 to 15% mildly. I would say 40% moderately, and probably the balance severely. And it is the watershed that empties into Pardee Reservoir. Because it's not overly large, there's a chance with the deployment of $500,000 with hopefully additional help in other areas from other private groups, we actually have a chance of doing something that would be lasting and noticeable. And I think that it's very important for experimental program to be successful for not only our electeds locally and at the state level, but federally to see a program be successful, so they're not afraid to target more monies of similar nature. When you're talking about a much, much larger watershed, for example, the Calaveras River watershed, which is closer to 95 square miles instead of less than a half. Okay? So I just felt that $500,000 in a 100 square mile watershed was going to do nothing for us. The money would be stretched too thin and we wouldn't be able to show anything for our efforts. And that seemed to me to do a disservice to both us and our program. But there are other programs that are available for us to move down south. I've made the formal request of FEMA and Cal OES if they would consider giving us a second FMAG hazmat grant for the Calaveras watershed as starter, as it were, seed money. So, and I think that with $500,000 I might be able to buy enough seed to make a difference.
Have you contacted the East Bay Mud about that?
East Bay Mud is working with me directly, and I'll talk about this in a little bit on one of the projects. They've been a very willing, active, and outreach partner for a project that is now nearly finished, which was the stabilization of Ponderosa Way from State Route 26 to the McCollum River. And they are also going to be, are offering to be our partner in this, in the FMAG Haz Mitigation Grant in terms of providing outreach, providing what should I say, resident engineering, bringing staff, bringing equipment, bringing money to the table to guarantee the part of the match that isn't made with volunteer and donation assistance. So they've been quite instrumental, and for any of you on the board who's interested, I believe that I have a tour heading down Ponderosa Way on Thursday of this week to see what was deployed before the rainstorm, what we did during the rainstorm, and how our efforts played out. It's a very, very steep watershed, severely burned, and it held very well.
Let me know that, what time you're meeting.
Okay, Supervisor Wright's interested. Okay, and Supervisor Edson. I don't think I can make it, but Chris Swan from East Bay Mud will be there, and he will be leading our representative from the UMRA grant that we had started to do work on before the fire and then put on hold until next year to do the final rock and base rock until we know we've got some stability in the watershed.
So just text us the info then?
Yes,
or email?
I will text you both the info on that one.
Thank you.
Okay, another grant program, which is out of DWR, is an emergency watershed protection program. And although they say it's an emergency, that's titled emergency, it will take a number of months for us to apply for and get approved, because none of these programs come without some sort of environmental review and environmental clearance. Some have much quicker environmental clearance than others, but the FMAG, the DWR program will take a little bit longer, but it also potentially is larger in scale. And then finally, there is a fund that we can tap into with our projects across all of our programs for this event, the 4240 event, hazard mitigation, that we can utilize. It's a question of being able to sell the projects to Cal OES and FEMA as being viable and meeting the needs of the program and costing those programs, and then getting the funds once we've determined where matching funds will come from. All right? So that's basically the outline, big picture of the watershed recovery, including the public infrastructure within that watershed. Any questions on those particular items? Okay. So I'll keep on going.
I guess, just a question on the, I don't know if this is the spot for it, but it sounds like it, the Calaveras Groans effort. Are you working with them or met with them at all?
I spoke with them in detail. I had a long conversation with the young gentleman who's taking the lead on that. We talked about what his efforts were. I talked about what my efforts were. He told me where he thought I was falling a little bit short, and I took that to heart and made a couple of minor tweaks to some of the things that I'm doing. Right now, what Calaveras Grown is looking for, and they're very effective because they are immediate and they have the ability, they don't have the overhead that Public Works does, meaning they don't have to get a right of entry. If a homeowner invites them onto the land to do work and they have materials to deploy, they can get on that land and deploy materials. And they have a lot of very, very good knowledge that's not only recent knowledge in stormwater best management practices, but long-term knowledge in terms of how does one manage one's land within this watershed. And so they're doing very good work. And what I think their most pressing need is donations. Donations of straw, donations of seed, donations of wattles, the types of BMPs that can really be very, very effective in the work that they're doing. And I also suggested to them that if they could bring themselves to get a county business license, then there is the potential that I could then hire them for some of my programs that will be coming. But that may not be in their best interest or our best interest, because right now they are filling a need to the extent that they can. They're not getting paid for their efforts right now.
Is there any cross pollination or cross resources that we can use? Like, can we provide some of the materials that they're using for the rest, stabilization?
That is certainly a possibility, but I have to warn you that any materials that the county makes available to them would not fall within our grant, our matching, our grant matching donations, because their programs do not qualify. whereas our programs do. And so, for example, if the new tub grinder, which is arriving next week at the landfill, creates essentially, assuming I have enough green waste, up to 200 cubic yards per day of chipped green waste, and I move that up and donated it to Calaveras Grown, then I could not use that donation value or that trucking value as matching funds for one of my other grants. That means that my matching funds are going to be having to come from someplace else. And what I am trying to do is I'm trying to preserve what resources that I have for these grants to reduce the dollar amount that we have to contribute out of our existing programs, even though it only could be 6.25% or less. Okay? So as we get further into the programs and the programs are deployed, and if it looks like I'm really reaching my grant levels with donated programs and volunteer labor, then I have the freedom to then begin donating some of the county resources to that type of a group. Okay? Hope that might not be the answer you wanted to hear, but I hope it's a start.
Well, it usually is not the answer I want to hear, but that's okay.
Okay?
I appreciate the effort.
Supervisor Lolivera, you look like you were brewing a good question.
Yeah, a quick note, and you mentioned the tub grinder. I know we talked last meeting about the tub grinder handling logs and bark beetle. Didn't think it was going to be able to do that. Do we have any further information on that?
I'm sorry, I got back to Supervisor Wright and Edson. I didn't get back to you. I talked with Adam Fries, our Calaveras Tuolumne Unit Forest Supervisor, and he indicated to me that sending the trees that are bark beetle infested through a tub grinder essentially kills them. And once we spread that bark out on the land and it dries, they are dead immediately. So he said that's an extremely effective treatment of bark beetle infested trees.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I forgot to include you in that communication.
It's all right.
Any other questions, or can I move on? Okay. So moving on to the roadway program, that would be either the emergency recovery or the public assistance program. I have a list of projects that we've put together. They've been reviewed by both road crews and by engineers in my engineering office. And what we did is we took and did detailed analysis of the 5 collector segments, or the 5 federal aid segments, which is about a little more than half of the miles of road within the burn area. And we came up with a cost of about $4.2 million, $4.3 million of damages for recovery. That is only road damages, signs, pavement, culverts, guardrail, that type of stuff. It does not include the other side, which is going to be the stabilization efforts, the watershed type of stabilization efforts that have to be deployed as well. And those costs in general will run about 15% of this total. So add another 15% to the 4.2, perhaps we could call it $5 million on the federal aid or the collector roads. I then took the same cost per mile and applied it to the other 30 some odd miles of county roads, and to come up with a cost on those. So in total, we're looking in the neighborhood upwards of $8.5 million of recovery repairs on county roads within the burn area. Now, that does not mean that we are going to spend all that money on these roads in immediate circumstances, because I fully expect that there's a high probability that we will lose large portions of some of our roadways within the burn area, and it will take some time to recover and get them replaced. Specifically, the one of my greatest fear is, of course, Jesus Maria Road in the neighborhood of Hoover, at the bottom of the canyon, at the bottom of both Calaveras River and Jesus Maria Creek. I really, any kind of event at all that exceeds a 2 or 3 year storm is likely going to do significant and semi-permanent damage to that roadway, and it would then have to be recovered with an engineered fix. As a result, I have put together the outlines of an alternative, and Cal OES and FEMA have looked at it and given me somewhat positive feedback of potentially recovering Ponderosa Way between Whiskey Slide and State Route 26, replacing the old bridge deck that had burned in this fire and regrading the road and installing drainage and protections as a parallel route that we can use if when we lose Jesus Maria as an exigent emergency repair.
That's a good idea.
Okay, thanks. So that is one of the projects that we will be discussing tomorrow. That one wouldn't actually be kicked off until we did take on the type of damage that would prevent us from being able to reopen Jesus Maria Road as a through roadway north to south within the burn area. Okay? I mentioned to you some of the other projects. A couple of, I have mentioned to you the Mountain Ranch Community Center project, getting the ball field ready for playing in the spring. I also mentioned with you some of the potential damages that we took on out at the fairgrounds. And a couple other projects, I have some suspicions of potentially losing some other areas, potentially the culvert at Wet Gulch and Whiskey Slide, apparently a box culvert near Cave City, on Cave City, near the caverns, Lower Michael Road Bridge over the creek running parallel with Mountain Ranch Road. So I've identified those projects and put some cost to them, and I'm going to put those in so that I don't have to do it should we lose them. If we don't lose them, great, those projects will fall out, easier to take out than to put in. But it's not horrible to put a project in to these as damage occurs as a subsequent result. Questions on that? Okay, so I've talked a little bit about the Ponderosa Road project. The reason I was able to deploy on that is I had a NEPA clearance document to do stabilization efforts on that roadway, and that had already been cleared prior to the fire, so I didn't feel that I was overstepping my bounds to continue those efforts responding to the fire. East Bay Mud was significantly helpful in making that work, including one of my crews deployed under contract from CCC. So now I'm beginning to go into some of the resources that I have and I'm mobilizing to help me get these programs on the ground and moving forward. One of them is the 3 crews of CCC, 2 crews which were working with the road crews and 1 crew which was working up on the Moke with the East Bay Mud crews. They have been under contract and deployed for a second term. They have 14-day straight terms, and then they get a day off, and then they come back. So one of my crews has already gone on vacation and come back, and the other 2 will be doing the next thing today and I believe yesterday. So we really never lose our full complement of CCC crews. The one thing that I will tell you is that those crews were deployed in tents in Mountain Ranch Community Park. We've since relocated them up to Lodestar, where they can sleep under shelter and they can cook under shelter. So that appears to be a longer-term deployment, and that's a better use. A little further for them to drive down to Mountain Ranch, probably not quite as far for them to drive up onto the Moke, but it gives them shelter and it gets them out of potential harm's way in Mountain Ranch on a wet, soggy field. I wouldn't want to sleep in a tent out there. So thank you for logistics for helping me to put that together.
Jeff, how many per crew?
There's anywhere from 10 to 17 per crew. So when the 3 crews are fully deployed, it's just over 50 people, including a cooking crew that actually does the shopping and the cooking to do the support. And so in the morning, they're making breakfast and packing lunches, and in the evenings, they are making dinner and getting the kids deployed to make their I think the kids actually make their own lunches. They just get set up to do that. Okay?
Thanks.
Any other questions on those crews? I have availability to ask for more crews, which I fully intend to do when I get approval of some of these grants, and I could use CCC fellers or potentially CAL FIRE fellers. My CAL FIRE inmate crews, I've made requests for them that are in. I've got a meeting with Captain White, I believe on Thursday, for us to talk about where they're going to be deployed. Outside of the burn area, I've got deployment requests to clean out Cosgrove Creek and San Andreas Creek. Inside the burn area, they are helping cleaning out alongside of the roadways. And they've been doing that, and they will continue to do that. Today, they are just above Senders, cleaning out the dam up there. Okay?
Are you going to, on that dam, have somebody reviewed how
spit out the words. How is that dam doing?
The dam apparently is doing fine. I have to tread a little bit carefully here. Suffice it to say that Scott Anderson and myself met with Alan Sender very recently and went over his concerns, provided some suggestions, and then put together how we plan together to flood fight and keep his facility, which I consider an essential facility within the fire burn area, open and running for business with a very limited amount of closure. Okay? Questions on that? So far, so good. I'm remembering this stuff. Some of the other resources that I have deployed, I made not a mutual aid request, it is a task request from a state agency out of Caltrans. They provided me with a project engineer, project manager, traffic op engineer, design engineer, landscape architect, and a construction engineer. That team has gone out, inspected the federal aid roads within the burn area, and they are now putting together damage assessment forms that are required by FHWA to kick in the funding for the emergency recovery program. They are also tasked to help me put together contracts for their replacements so they can replace themselves as soon as I can get people in place to carry on this program, because it will not be possible for me to use in-house staff to do this. We're talking about deploying $10 million to $15 million worth of work over the next 1 to 2 years. That is beyond the capability and the capacity of my staff, which is currently understaffed to deliver our current program anyway. So that's been my best way to... What?
How long do you have them for?
Until they replace themselves. I also have, through the same kind of request with Department of Water Resources, I have a geologist, I have a project engineer that are arriving Wednesday. We will be meeting to discuss immediate repairs that they can help direct on the roads, as well as the larger grant project and some of the larger watershed management projects to see if it's deployable under the hazard mitigation program, such as large sediment dams upstream of New Hogan and upstream of Pardee. So they will be arriving on Wednesday to begin that process, and Monday of next week I will have 2 teams of flood fighters. They come with their own equipment, their own expertise, and they will essentially be in lockstep with our road crews and potentially CAL FIRE crews for the deployment of exigent emergency preparation measures on the county roads. I don't know if I've run out of things to say or if I'm just getting tired.
It's good therapy.
What? It's good therapy to do the communications. Okay, so yeah, I do have more things to go. If I'm running out of your time, or my patience, or vice versa, stop me and I'll go sit down at any time. As you know, immediately following the suppression activities, a consortium of state agencies put together the Post-Fire Watershed Emergency Response Team, put together a report. That report was the basis of what you saw this morning. And the phase 1 identified the severity of the burn. It also identified the segments that would be potentially contributing sediment flows, and also points of discharge for those individual basins. This report was then, the data that was developed as part of this report was then passed up to the joint, the JFO, the Joint Field Office for the Butte and the Valley Fire, taken on by a variety of people up there, including Army Corps of Engineers, National Resource Conservation District, FEMA GIS, Cal OES GIS, just a number of technical experts in the field. They then carried that analysis further to bring to us this risk-based analysis that you saw this morning. In addition to that, the initial assessment came up with 26 sites of potential threat to life and property. A second report was then picked up by a similar group, but also included the environmental overhead and constraints to those initial 26 sites. They have added an additional 2 sites to this, And I got this yesterday, I went over it last night, and then deployed of these 27 sites that they think are in need of exigent addressing or emergency addressing. 5 sites are being addressed by their threats to private property improvements. They are being addressed with NRCS and Public Works through the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. 10 sites are being addressed by County Road Department, and 2 to 4 of those sites are potentially eligible for either the ER or the PA. 10 of the sites will receive follow-up with a combination of landowner, notification, Environmental Health Department, Building Department, as well as outreach to Cal Recycle, Debris Removal Program, and FEMA, so that we can make sure that these sites are being addressed and we're not putting temporary housing or permanent housing in harm's way, because that's a very important issue. One site is a Caltrans site, which I will forward it to them, and one site requires no further action because we've made outreach to the property owner and they are removing the danger from debris flow. Okay? Any questions on the Phase 2 report? Just so that you know, I have in that NRCS, Emergency Watershed Protection, that's part of these 2 reports. I have 1 residence on Sadie Lane, 2 on Murraydale Lane, 1 on Highway 26, and 1 on Cave City Road. So I do have specific addresses if you would like. There is 1 more site, but I've yet to be able to reach and get an answer from an owner on, and so any help would be great. We've reached out, it hasn't worked out. It's the change of ownership, it's successors to owners who've recently died, and I have a home. I don't know if it's being lived in or not being lived in. It's on a private road, it's beyond a locked gate, and it's in harm's way on the Calaveritas River, Calaveritas Creek, okay, off of Frico City Road.
So how many of those sites are they whole sites still, or are they gone, or are they, are they burnt down?
No, these are, all of the sites that I just mentioned are sites that have, the sites that are being addressed directly by the NRCS Emergency Watershed Program in response to the PFWRT 2 reports. Those are homes that survived the fire but are now in harm's way.
Okay.
Of the homes that were identified, 1 is not occupied. It has not been occupied. What I've asked is I've asked Cal Recycle to get in there, do the asbestos removal, household hazardous waste removal, so that we can then back away from that site. And if it stays through the winter, great. The owner can do what they want with it. If it gets washed out, it's not washing out something that is potentially toxic or dangerous to the environment or our drinking water supply.
Jeff, if you text me the address of the Calveritas.
Calveritas one?
Okay, okay,
Because I can ask around.
okay. I'm not sure it's your district. It might be
Yeah.
Supervisor Ponte's district, is it?
Some of it could be.
Okay, how about I do it to both of you? I text the address to both of you?
You can text with all of us, because you never know.
Yeah, we never know. Okay,
It may be their district, but I might know them.
Yeah, that's,
there you go. I'll text it to you all, or have someone in my department text it to all of you.
that's,
Okay, so then that leaves the last point of discussion that I alluded to this morning, which is, what are we doing in our attempt to provide information and protection and emergency response to those property owners whose homes haven't burned, who are still occupying in the burn area, that are potentially in harm's way, that weren't in harm's way prior to the fire. The County GIS Group has received the final DINS report from CAL FIRE. They are now going through that, comparing it with our internal county data for accuracy, to make sure that we haven't counted places twice, or that the places that we have counted are accurately identified by ownership and address. That database is also being compared and combined with the right of entries secured through Environmental Health Department. Okay? Once that list has been assembled and, how should I say, ground truthed, as it were, we will then take all other parcels that we know to be developed within the fire area, subtract those from the known burns. We will then go through those known remainders and compare it against our post-fire aerial photogrammetry to see if we can see sites, either burned or unburned. And we will start the process up again. Those that are not burned, we will then put onto our mapping, onto our risk analysis mapping, and if they are in harm's way, we will provide those list of addresses to the Calaveras County Office of Emergency Services for deployment in advance of storms, either through telephone calls, through Nixle alerts, through radio alerts, through all the methods that we have determined and defined as being necessary for this type of notification. So, and I'm hoping to have that together before the next rain event. Okay? And that's stepping a little bit outside of my grounds, but it still needs to be done, so we're doing it.
So we didn't really have much going on with this one, though.
We didn't have what?
Much going on with this event that we had?
Well, in this event, what we did is we went out and we provided notification to the properties that were on the PFWERT emergency list. And we deployed the sheriff's deputies on Sunday to let the people that are living there know that they are in harm's way. It still creates a little bit of a problem when you're talking about private lands on private roads behind locked gates that county does not have the keys to. So, you know, now it becomes public safety versus private property rights issue, which I don't believe that the sheriff would be busting down the gate, cutting a chain or cutting a lock to get in. And we can only hope that we have another form of contact with those residents.
No, what I'm saying is, you know, do you know the rainfall that we had?
Oh, well, I know what we had in Mountain Ranch because I was following it between Sunday afternoon and early this morning. It stopped, I think, around 2 or 3 up there. We were closing in on between 1.6 and 2 inches. It was nice because it never was heavy for any 15-minute period. It was heavy and it was constant and it went over a long period of time. So that's really one of the best potential rainfalls we can have. It drives the ash into the soil, it soaks everything, it starts mobilizing the seed bank, and the next 10 days of relatively warm weather will do wonders. We will be greening up the burn. It will be a different looking area from an aerial photograph a week from Monday.
So I just can't help thinking, when this thing first started, I was probably on the second day I was talking to you. You were talking about seeding already. And, you know, and everybody kept saying, no, we can't do that, it's not gonna work. But in this case, I think that we've had 2 decent rains with a lot of warm weather. I think it would have probably been pretty effective.
Well, seeding unto itself as a BMP is not effective. It becomes fodder for birds if it's not covered. It gets washed out with the soil if you haven't got a mulch or some sort of a cover over it. And if you're trying to drop seed into a hydrophobic soil area, it's not going to do anything because it's not going to sprout and it doesn't have enough nutrient to sustain itself. And so it has to be seed plus, okay? And depending on the severity of the burn, it has to be seed plus plus. Moderate burn, it's seed plus. And so, yes, while the state and federal governments repeat again and again that aerial seeding is not a preferred method of attack, in combination with other BMPs, it can be quite an effective attack. And good to know from my perspective that I'm not being limited on the grants that I'm applying for in terms of what I choose to deploy. As long as I have support, scientific support for it, having been successful in the past, and I have the support of the landowners, then it's really full speed ahead within, of course, federal and state programs in an emergency situation, which is faster than a normal program, but it's still probably too slow for you and I.
Very. It's not just us, it's, you know,
Not just you and I know.
it's folks living out there and not at their homes, so.
But the last thing that I would want to do in this event is deploy temporary housing, deploy permanent housing, or allow people to exist on places that didn't used to be in a flood zone that are now in a flood zone. And so all those 3 have to be addressed. I mean, our first and highest order of business is to protect life. Human.
Thank you, Jeff.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
after, you know, you forgot where you were, didn't you? Just for a minute.
No, it took a while for the sound to get to the back.
Oh, there it was.
It's a long distance. Good morning, or no, it's afternoon. I forgot to set my clock. Jeff White, building official. Not much changing in our shop. We've issued 138 electrical permits. We have 3 FEMA houses out there now, and 1 application for reconstruction on part of a building. But that's been about it at this point in time.
Okay.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'd also add that following today's part of the meeting, I called HCD, let them know what to expect on the way of moving forward with the plan for the FEMA houses on properties. So we're all in the starting blocks. We'll get this thing going. That it?
Yep.
Okay.
Unless you want us to think of stuff to
I
ask
mean,
you about.
I
if you
could
want me to
think-
bring, you know, I can be creative.
Go for it.
I'll wait. I'll just send you an email.
Okay.
All right, any other reports? How about public comments?
Rosemary Wilson from McCallum Hill. Jeff has also been attending public meetings, at least 2 that I was at, outside of Mountain Ranch Community Hall late into the night, and also at the recovery from wildfire recovery that was held last week. One of the issues that my neighbors and I are running into is that whilst the straw is being delivered to different locations, it is an enormous job to then take those bales in the back of your Subaru or on the back of a truck and actually get them up to your ground, because they're not being delivered to the sites where the straw is needed. And then the amount of straw that it does take, I'm not sure if it's something like 50 bales an acre to get it of a particular thickness all over your parcel. But that is a big concern of people. I have over about 4 different parcels, about 21 acres, some being of more value to me than others, but I can't do that on my own. And so I'm just wondering if there are ways that different organizations can, or Jeff can try and get people organized to help either deliver the straw. And I tell you, once that straw gets wet, it gets even more difficult to lift. I could just about lift one on Dom Nuccio's land. I went up there and saw if I could lift it, but it's not a trivial thing when it comes to spreading straw over acreage.
Yeah, have you talked to Amy Roach down there?
I did when she was at the library doing a public information thing.
There might be some help for that, assistance through that organization.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty able-bodied, but there are plenty that
Well, you
aren't
got
as
10
bad
acres,
as me.
I mean, so,
Well,
yeah, that's a lot of work.
You might be able-bodied right now, but
Yeah, by the time you end up with 1 acre, yeah.
oh, I'm good. I'm going to be ready to conquer the world and
go on
covering it
business,
with
yeah.
straw, I'm sure. But just to, just something to,
Yeah, I'd give Amy a
another
call.
thing to bear in mind.
Yeah, see if there's some type of,
group out there that can help.
or program, to finance some,
Yeah, the FAA or FFA,
Debbie
FSA.
knows about those guys.
FSA?
the young farmers.
Oh, FFA, yeah.
FFA. They apparently were good at helping my neighbor in getting some straw out to his property.
Yeah, have you tried Calaveras Grown?
No, well, the thing was that this particular neighbor had bought a couple of truckfuls of the stuff to put up on his property, but unfortunately it wasn't delivered to his property. It was delivered to the equestrian, the horse arena in Moke Hill. And even though he had asked and arranged initially to pay for the straw, it got delivered over there. So it became sort of public, up for grabs, anybody who wanted it. And so, the straw is there, and his property is, 5 miles up the road or 3 miles up the road, as would mine be from Mountain Ranch.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Bonnie, there's a program going on with schools and the resiliency program. And they're looking for ways to get students involved. So if you call Kevin Hesser, he might be able to help you out with that. Okay? Because they have a leadership program along with this whole school resiliency program, and the idea is to get the students involved in projects within their community so that they can get that experience and become a part of it. So
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Kevin Hessler.
He's a teacher at Toyon, but it's part of a program he's working on.
So if you, afterwards, by the time we leave here, I'll make sure you get the phone number, okay?
Thank you very much.
All right. You guys can do it.
I have his email.
That's good. Mr. Race,
I
pretty
know.
quiet today.
I know you guys have been busy, and maybe you already heard about it, but Governor Brown declared an emergency as far as the trees that burnt and sitting there. They're going to increase,
Burns and sitting there, or the trees that are bug killed?
well, they've been, I don't want to read the whole thing to you, okay?
All right.
I just want to save you time. If you know all about it, I don't want to waste your time. But he's also exempt from the CEQA. They want to increase burning the dead forest, dead trees, and matter of fact, they're getting a grant, giving out the grant. So if you can get money and help and speed up the clearing of those trees that are full of bugs, because you were talking about the bugs before. So that's coming available, and it's just got going Sunday, the 1st. I believe this is the 1st. So if it's something you're interested, I'd be more than happy to pass it on, or maybe you already have it.
Peter,
Just brought it to your attention. Yes, sir.
we're going to be bringing that to the board on the 17th,
Okay.
that issue. Exactly. So
You're
thank
way
you.
ahead of me, and I thought you were just good looking. Thank you.
So you said you're gonna bring that to the board on the 17th?
That is the plan.
For what?
For board consideration as to whether we are going to outline what the program is and probably declare a state of emergency tied in with the drought emergency. This actually is a trailer on the drought emergency that the governor signed back in 2014. So my understanding is that the tree kill is part and parcel of that. So I have to look into it, but it may be a matter of declaring a drought emergency for the tree kill specifically to be able to access funds. Again, just starting to look into this. Chris brought this to my attention the other day.
So who's gonna be able to access funds?
Yeah, that was one of the questions I had, is it going to help us?
That,
So I guess we'll find out on the 17th, huh?
the little bit I've reviewed on this, my understanding is that it may be state agencies that are assisting, or there might be additional funds. But I have to do the homework on this. I just read the press release very briefly the other day.
All right, thank you.
And I might add to that is that you could reach out to the administrator over in Sonora. The supervisors there were instrumental in pushing that along and getting the governor to sign something. So they were,
Yeah,
as a
what
result
happened
of
is
the
during the fire,
fire.
the other counties were actually pushing this through each, like Mariposa, I know did it, Tuolumne did it, and then
Yeah.
I think some others as well. So we kind of had to put it on the back burner.
Right. I know last week that the Tuolumne supervisors and Mariposa supervisors went to Sacramento and had a meeting with Brown about this specific thing, and later then it was signed, so
Yes.
they're pretty involved in that.
That's actually good information, and wasn't aware of that. And again, just read the governor's press release 2 days ago on that, and would like to dig into it. But I think it's something very valid for this board to consider.
I would agree.
Okay, thanks. Any other public comments? All right, folks from FEMA or OES want to talk about something? Give a report? You're going to carry it, huh, Charlie?
Charlie Simpson, Cal OES Division Supervisor for Calaveras County. We continue working in support of your department heads and CAO's office, and I think we have a few hurdles here and there, but I think we're working through things. What I did want to do is take an opportunity to introduce John Schusler at the back of the room, and he is my deputy now. He replaced Al Landbauer last week. So if you have any problems or anything, please let us know. Any questions?
Yep, thank you. Normally, they're pretty shy people, so you guys are okay then, huh? All right. Okay, so let's move on, please, to number 3. Approve, Auditor Controller, approve theater plan modification for lending under emergency.
Yeah, before I start on this, I just wanted to remind everyone the taxing jurisdictions as well as the nonprofits that this Friday is the deadline to get your application for public assistance in. Even if you have no intent of pulling the trigger on actually getting any of that money, that's the window. So a month from now, when you go, oh, you know, I really should have put that application in, it's too late. So Friday's it. Friday, they have to have that. If someone is watching this or listening to this and they think, oh, shoot, I missed the applicant briefing and I don't have a copy of that application, feel free to contact me, Auditor Controller, directly, and I can send it to you. So what has occurred in the course of my office is that we are monitoring the cash availability for everyone in our treasury. And it's fairly normal for districts to potentially be in the red this time of year. It's dry period. Their tax apportionments don't come in until December. So it's not ever really very startling to me. However, we have a mechanism in place if they are participating in the teeter program that we go ahead and lend them 55% of their tax apportionment through December. So it is concerning to me when those taxing jurisdictions are actually at or about to exceed or have just jumped the line on 50% of their tax apportionments. So when we looked at who was being impacted by this, it clearly was the fire districts. And I did make mention of this, if you remember several meetings ago when we were having our final budget hearings, I said, you know, when we were talking about teeter and the use of teeter and why do we need a balance there, and I said, you know, the reality is we're not just the treasurer we don't just treasure the county, you know, local government funds, it's all of the special districts and the school districts and everyone. So the teeter program is open to all of those taxing jurisdictions that treasure their monies with us. So, a couple of districts had come to me to say, you know, we are probably going to need to borrow money. I knew exactly who those districts were going to be. And as we were going through the fire suppression activities and then even afterwards, I knew that it was going to be a problem. So I reached out to a handful of the districts and said, you know, look, what are your options? What are you working on with regards to funding from the state? Are you going to do an application under this disaster? Are you going to go through some other alternate funding? And it's kind of a mixed bag, but the reality is they have exceeded their available resources because of the amount of money that they put out for additional overtime staffing hours, as well as supplies. And they're probably not going to get a check tomorrow. So I have to be able to cover their operational costs through December. And if you think about it, this is pertinent for this month because we're already allowing them to borrow up to 55% through December. And then once December happens, then they get to borrow another 40%. So the issue I'm struggling with right now is between October and through December. And I have to get them through October through the end of December. And they're already at or exceeding their availability under teeter. So what I'm asking from the board is that you pass a resolution that under this emergency declaration, we go ahead and open up the teeter borrowing to 100% for the fire districts that responded during this emergency. So, I mean, we've got lots of special districts. Most of them weren't impacted directly by, you know, any of this.
Question. So they responded during this fire. Are they tracking that? Didn't we receive some funding to be able to cover some of those expenses? Or
Not for
was it
fire
just-
districts.
It was only county expenses?
Only county
So
expenses.
why aren't we receiving funding to cover the fire district?
Fire districts are not a county, they're not a county entity. They're not under the governance of the Board of Supervisors. That's why they will be their own applicant for public assistance.
So if we received ours quickly like that, then why can't they?
They have to apply for it.
And is it because they don't know how to do that, or?
I know that they're in conversations with the state, but the difference is our potential expenses were much, much greater than what the fire districts were. We have entire, you know, road infrastructures. We have, you know, the entire county worth of expenses over the fire response and recovery that we had to deal with. The fire districts are within their jurisdiction. So it's a much smaller piece in terms of dollars and cents. I mean, does it mean the same to them as it means to us getting that advance? Yes, but there's a mechanism in place for us to get an advance. There wasn't a mechanism, and there isn't a mechanism for them to get an advance.
So California didn't have a mechanism for them to run through the same type of
No,
program that we did?
no. It's not as fast. So they're all tracking their expenses. It's all going to be covered, even the ones that had burnt up engines or burnt up equipment, that's all going to be covered, but they're going to have to apply for those recoups of cost. And in the meantime, we have a cash flow issue for operations.
Are we helping them out to do that?
That's why I'm bringing this to you.
No, I mean, are we helping them out to make sure that they're getting every bit of recovery that they can?
I called them and said, make sure that you apply by Friday. We reached out to
typically know
them
how
to
to
make
do
sure
this.
that a lot of them have financial people working for them.
Okay.
So
This is quite common.
we're not involved in their day-to-day operations. There is a limit on what we have, you know, insight on what they're doing. They have their own boards, they have their own fiscal people, they make their own decisions. So I have some districts
All I'm saying
that,
is this is not an average, everyday type deal either. This is something extraordinary.
I agree.
Okay.
So what I'm looking for the board is to basically open up loaning to get us through December so that they can get the remainder of their potential taxes. And it basically is open till June 30th. It has to be paid back by June 30th, and theoretically, if they get, their tax apportionments when they're supposed to get them, it should be fine. The one caveat is we do have a couple districts that are going to have long-term substantial revenue losses. There is no recovery on long-term revenue losses. So
What districts are they?
Central Calaveras, West Point Fire. And
Well, it's mostly central, though.
it's mostly
'Cause
central.
Actually, West Point didn't lose any structures in their fire district. There was one
They
that
didn't
was-
have any burns,
What's that?
even land burn.
Yeah, but I mean, they didn't lose they're not gonna have revenue loss because of the fire. Because there was no structures lost in West Point Fire District, except for there was actually one structure not related to the fire that was burning. But they didn't
Okay.
lose any.
And potentially
Asset
Mokelumne
loss.
Hill.
Asset loss.
They didn't lose any structures, West Point Fire District. The boundaries didn't lose, it was all.
I think it's more Mokill
It
and
was
Central
Mokill
Fire.
and Central, yeah. I just, FYI.
So, and it's the calamity is, I know that the assessor is going through the calamities right now. She announced yesterday at the meeting that we had that it could take, or maybe it was last week, I'm getting my days mixed up. It could take as long as 6 months for her to get through all of the properties, and there were something like 2,700 parcels that were burnt in the burn area.
So, what do you recommend then, as far as like future planning to deal with that? Do you have a recommendation for us?
For,
I mean, 'cause obviously, even though they're a different district than our board, they're an important part of the county. I mean, how do you have any ideas of how to help them out, or how we can help them?
I think I can.
this is how we can help them, by opening up
Yeah,
borrowing.
well, right, I meant just,
Outside of that, they're their own taxing jurisdiction. And so they have the ability to pass special assessments. They have the ability to do a bond. They have the same capabilities that we do. But they also have the same constraints. They can't go out and just borrow money. So we are the only option for them to borrow money. And so that's how we can help them. And I have reached out to the CAO that there was some legislation that we might be able to piggyback off of on tax loss revenue. I'm not sure where that is, Mr. Moss, but that was something that's very important because we are also going to be exposed to that revenue loss. So if we can get that legislation, get piggybacked on top of that legislation, then there might be some relief, not only for us, but those fire districts. So that would be another component to helping them.
what kind of rate?
Tax revenue loss.
What kind of legislation was it?
It was,
It's tied in with, it's actually very old legislation. It's been piggybacked several times, and it's something that we actually have already spoken to Lake about, because we kind of thought that both of us going in together had a better chance of that. And that would make obviously a significant difference for us. We haven't had a chance to pursue that yet, but it is on our radar, so certainly we want to look at that. And I'm sorry, maybe Rebecca already covered this, but one of the things that she's talking about with these special districts is the use of the monies for teeter. Tell me if I'm speaking out of turn, Rebecca, please. Is really no more than a bridge, because one of the questions I had of Rebecca when she came and talked to me about this a couple of weeks ago was, well, that's all great, we can make them 100% for, what, another month? But the reality is, and it has to get them through June 30, so the reality is this gives them an opportunity to actually pursue the reimbursement through the different programs. So I just wanted to reiterate what you were stating.
Yeah.
So, couple of different
Yeah.
things going on there.
and historically, and I'm not asking for this today, we're going to monitor it, and we're going to work closely with the couple of districts that have reached out to me of potential funding issues that are going to go past June 30th. I would bring that back before the board. Historically, I've only been able to find one other time that the board actually approved a longer-term loan for for taxing jurisdictions. And I want to say that was maybe during the Darby fire. And I don't remember which districts those were for, but it came to the board and it was a longer than 1 fiscal year loan. So that is also a potential. Just wanted to make you aware that that is the reality. And I don't know how long it would take for us to seek out that legislation for us to piggyback on that. If it takes longer than June 30th, then the reality is I may be coming back to you to ask for a longer-term loan for these districts, because operationally, I don't know what else to do for them.
Thanks.
I wouldn't waste my time on that.
Ms. Callen? One quick note. How many districts are actually involved in the bond process? I know that Ebbets Pass Fire up in my district has gone into a program that seems to work very successful. I understand that's been tried in the past. It requires a vote from the public.
For the special assessment,
Bond special assessment.
there's 5, out of all the fire districts we have, 5 of them have a special assessment. Ebbets Pass clearly has the best special assessment.
And,
A lot of hard work.
yeah, and that seems to be quite a helpful type thing financially for those
Yes,
districts.
the last district that was able to successfully get a special assessment passed was West Point Fire. And that was, there wasn't much balking by the voters.
It was an insane percentage of the people.
It was,
voted for it. I forget what it was. It was like
yeah.
80% or something.
Yeah.
I think
They
that might
tend
be
to
something
have
we might want
a,
to educate the rest of the districts in.
And I
know
have.
We've
I've-
been very successful.
yeah,
in Ebbets Pass.
I've talked to all of them.
Fire
They've-
chiefs talk about it quite a bit.
They talk about it all the time. And when our county got hit from a tax assessment standpoint, the loss of revenue was unbelievable. And so there was a lot of discussion about what they could do. I mean, the first thing was, how do they get a bigger portion of the 1%? It ain't gonna happen. So your other option is a special assessment. And so that's the opportunity for these districts to reach out to their constituency and sell it. And so a lot of districts have been very successful in selling that because it's a localized tax. And it means something to the local people that live there, as opposed to if you try to pass a county-wide general tax, those don't generally fly too well.
Yeah. Scenario, what would happen if a fire district just goes financially bankrupt? They can't exist. What happens to that safety requirement? Who takes that over?
The
And how do we
safety
regulate?
requirement still stands. LAFCO would have to come in, and basically there would be a it's a dissolving of a district. And so you would have to find another district that would take on that jurisdiction. Because the safety requirements are still there. There still has to be coverage.
Would that involve CAL FIRE coming in and taking over that responsibility, maybe?
My understanding is you'd have to find another local fire district to do it.
Local fire
Yeah.
district.
So it's LAFCO would get involved, because LAFCO is who originally was involved in the formation of the district as it was.
Okay.
It would still go to a vote of the public. So we haven't seen it happen in this county before. There's other counties where it has happened, not fire districts, but it's happened with veterans districts, with cemetery districts, and some of the other special districts that are out there that just they weren't viable districts. So they've not so much dissolved them as consolidated them.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Public comments?
Yes. Tom Sullivan, Ebbets Pass Fire. I'm on the board, and a few things came up here that I could probably shed some light on. But I want to first applaud Ms. Callen for what she's doing. The fire districts in this county have been heading for trouble since the economy dumped. We're lucky, we're supposedly the richest in the county. Well, I submit we may have the richest cash flow. With our bills are much bigger than our take-in some months. But what I'm trying to get across to you is that there's going to be a comeuppance down the road. We've been working on our reserves since the economy took a dump, hoping it would come out of it like everybody else. Unfortunately, it even got worse this past year because there was no snow, there was no skiing on the mountain, and one of our ambulances usually makes quite a bit of transport money. From that, we lost a number of hundred thousands of dollars. So what's happening here is good, but what I'm trying to say to you is we will come to a point where nobody has any money if this doesn't change. And as far as our reimbursements, now we have reimbursements coming also. We had to bring in people for standby and so forth, and we put an engine out. We weren't touched as much as some others, but we have to wait 6 months for that money too. And that's usually what it takes. That's the normal amount. I know you guys got your money right away, but I think ours is coming by covered wagon. But I just want to make sure that you understand that we'll be back, because there's going to be some problems unless things change. Now, it could change for us, but the rest of the fire districts, I can see where they're going to be really in trouble. And as far as the CDF thing coming in, it can happen. It's not free. What they charge is cost plus 30% administrative fee. 30% is pretty steep. That's what they charge. I was involved in it in Orange County. You have to really make sure you're in control when they're here, because you want them to run the fire departments the way you want them run, not the way they want them run. So there are a lot of things to think about, and a lot of factors. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
Before I agree with him 100%, but one more thing I'd like to mention. Maybe I misheard or was it the right subject. When other county comes in for mutual aid, wasn't there some kind of federal grant or something that helped the county to pay them? There was some talk about something along the line that there was a federal state grant so you could pay the out-of-town fire districts that come in here. Okay? Now, you mentioned that each fire district is independent. Is there somehow we can get some of that dollars? Because each fire district, I don't care if he supported somebody else out of his district, or my consolidated fire district, I presume they went up to help that area. Couldn't we cash in on that state? Is it possible?
CAL FIRE is the one who's reimbursing these fire
CAL
departments for
FIRE
responding.
reimbursing those mutual aids, even if it's
Right.
out of town? 'Cause
Right.
I saw some from,
Mutual aid agreements, and it's
Okay,
all
all
related
right.
to CAL FIRE. The county
that's
does
one thing.
not.
The other thing is, yes, I like to echo his concern, because in my fire district, we have deep concern. And it got voted down for other political issues when the two districts consolidated. There was some behind it. But I don't know if there's a legal way to do it, but that percentage, there's got to be a way to do it. There's no ifs and buts about it. Otherwise, you're going to see district go bust. But when you how what percentage of the property tax everybody gets, that should somehow be revised. Somehow it's got to be revised. Because property taxes go someplace where it's totally wasted, and I don't want to name the other county agency. There's a total scam, and there's some places that really need it are not getting the percentages. Now, we're trying to work with LAFCO to make some adjustment on these districts, and I talked to some of you about it. But for some reason, I don't believe the board really didn't give enough recognition to those guys who were the first responder, who got their butts up there right away and handled the situation. They're not competition. They're your constituents and they're servicing you. So there's a couple of things that we're going to have to look at in relatively near future so it doesn't get to be really bad. I mean, I've seen those guys working on the trucks and stuff, actually making things because they couldn't afford to buy new parts for it. And they have auxiliaries, they have bingo and all that just to survive. So, yes, it's going to be a very soon a heavy-duty problem for the county. So, good luck, folks. You needed some more headaches. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comments? Board?
I make a motion to approve the teeter plan modification for lending under emergency declaration.
Second.
Second.
So I have 2 seconds. Which,
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said.
So you got a second.
I seconded it, yeah.
So I got a motion by Supervisor Pani, a second by Supervisor Wright. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Supervisor announcements. Anybody up for that?
I'll just state I have there's a COG meeting tomorrow night, starting at the new time, which is 5 o'clock. And it's held here in this room. And yesterday I attended the Calaveras Businesses Symposium, which was sponsored by a number of agencies, Chamber of Commerce, Calaveras Women's Network, Angels Camp Business Association. Thought it was a very nice event. It was a lot of good, useful information, a lot of different agencies there that were federal and state, as well as local agencies and local businesses. And it was a pretty nice symposium, providing a lot of information, and they hope to grow with this. And I think it'll be a nice thing for our businesses to look forward to in the future. Helps you grow and sustain your business. It also talked a little bit about businesses that are affected by the fire, whether you're in the ag, tourism type businesses, cottage industry, et cetera. And so they also had representatives there for folks who could talk to that specific area. If you were affected by the Butte fire, there was opportunities for you to perhaps look at grants and loans and services in general on how to get your business back on its feet.
That was SBA, right?
SBA was one of them, U.S. Department of Commerce, SBC, SBA, SBDC, RCRC, all those alphabet soup.
A lot of alphabets there.
That's all I have.
Okay.
We attended excuse me a moment here. I also stopped by the Calaveras County Business Seminar just to poke my head in and see what that was about. I was able to attend another meeting there held with a group of individuals with Supervisor Ponte discussing several issues that affect our county and what could happen. I also attended our first organizing meeting for the funeral for Sheriff Coontz. We have reached a tentative schedule of what's to happen, which is being published throughout the media. The Pine Tree, Calaveras Enterprise, I believe that word's getting out. We have a finalized meeting on Thursday, which will designate any changes to be made, but right now, it appears that schedule will stand. There are some things I know the public might be interested in. They expect a large presence of law enforcement, and at the wishes of the family and at the Sheriff's Department, there will be certain things that will take place. There'll be a private service at St. Andrews and San Andreas, St. Andrews Catholic Church. That'll be for family and invited guests. The law enforcement procession will stage at the old airport, and they will proceed in procession to Ironstone, taking Highway 49 to Old Highway 4, passing through Angels Camp, and proceeding up Highway 4 to Main Street in Murphy's, turning onto Main Street, then onto Algiers, continuing down through 6 Mile Road to Ironstone Amphitheater. The public is encouraged to respond to the amphitheater early. Seating will be quite intense, so I would encourage anybody to get there early and possibly get a seat. There'll be a seating direction at the amphitheater where you will be parked and where you can attend the celebration of life. I just received an email, Senator Barry Hill and his staff will be attending. I'm waiting back word from our legislature and the Congress, Tom McClintock. I don't know if he will be attending. I'll have that word hopefully. I will be attending some other functions. Highway 4 water meeting, water corridor group is meeting on the 5th. I will be trying to attend that after attending some other functions as far as the viewing for Sheriff Coons. I'm meeting with Forest Meadows Homeowners Association tomorrow to discuss their issues, and one of their problems being the bark beetle situation. That's quite intense up in our area in District 3 and over in Supervisor Wright's district. I will be attending also the EPOC meeting, Evans Pass Property Owners Committee Association, bring them up to speed on our fire, how far we've come with that, and also our bark beetle and some other things. One last thing, I mentioned a young man named Goose. He lost his life in a car accident, and I've been working with him for the last 10 months to try to establish a skate park in Arnold. I will be attending his memorial on Sunday. Thank you.
Last Saturday, I attended a benefit breakfast in Amador County. Was actually a very big crowd, and the benefit was for the fire victims in Calaveras County, so it was sort of neat to be over there and meet some of the county supervisors while they were there, as well as the fire chiefs that helped us out during the fire over here. And I don't know what kind of money they raised, nor did I ask, but it was actually a very nice morning. Depending on what time we get out of here, there's a dinner tonight with the Legion, their Thanksgiving dinner, and I'm hoping to go to that, but I also see I've got about 10 phone calls here I've got to make before I can get to that. And tomorrow there is a COG meeting at 5 p.m. On Thursday morning at 10 a.m. there's a JPA 12 meeting. It's a public meeting. It's at the library, if anyone's interested in going. On that afternoon at 2:30 to 4:30, I will have a meeting with the Public Works Director and state compliance officers for our local implementation plan, which has to do with the transfer stations, landfill, and all those things that we put in our garbage can to make sure that we are progressing like we should. Friday, I was going to go to a Commission on Aging meeting, but I see with the all the activities associated with the loss of our sheriff, that has been canceled until November 20th, which will make it a little easier for me to get up to Ironstone out of respect for Sheriff Kuntz. And that being said, the following week's probably got a whole bunch of things, but we'll be back one more time.
Mostly just dealing with fire constituent, trying to help people the best I can. A lot of times it's not the answer that they want to hear, so it's really challenging for me at this point in time. And I also, I think at 4 o'clock, we have a mental health board advisory meeting, so I'll be attending that here in a few minutes.
Okay. So on the 28th of last week, I sat here and for the special district funding meeting. On the 29th, went to the Calaveras Office of Education and met with Delta College and Columbia College presidents, and we talked about post-secondary education in the future. Judy Hawkins was there, and was a very great addition. Jerry Roosh was there, Jason Robitel, and they're, both Delta and Columbia have been collaborating. They're going to open their, Columbia's going to open up a site up at Vallecito, and next month, or this month actually, sometime, and they'll send out a little notice for like a grand opening, and really great deal that they're collaborating with Columbia on classes so that we can have a greater impact within the county on the college courses that they're offering. So it's been a long time coming, but they seem to be pretty engaged in it. Dr. Fairchild is a very gracious person. She's real easy to work with and very interested. So I have requested that, they're trying to figure out why are we not getting the classes filled here when they're offering these classes. And so my whole thing is consistency and marketing. We've been, for many years, raising our kids to believe that they have to leave the county to get an education. And so it's going to have to start at a very young age, letting them know, gee, it's okay, you can get your education here too, at least the first 2 years of junior college. And so that's a culture type thing, I think, that needs to change. So, there's certain things that we can do about that. Step it up on some of the publications and the outreach. And they also, Columbia College also is going to offer this water class again. I think it's come spring, which is, that's a real big thing. You would think that, as important as that is in today's world, the opportunity to be able to get educated in that particular industry, you would think that class would be full. So I would recommend to anybody to spread that news and get them engaged in that, because that's a very, very good industry to be in. So that's a good class. So 10 on the 30th, I was over here at the sheriff's office, the old one, and the county had their haunted house. Brian was scared a couple of times, actually.
It's because somebody grabbed me in the dark.
And that was my job. So that was probably one of the best haunted houses I've ever seen. Kelly, what's Kelly's last name? Stefani? She did a fantastic job. Fantastic job. It was a really, really well thought out, planned, and a very good deal. Lots of great volunteers, and it was a good break from what we've been going through for the past month or so. So I seen a lot of the county employees come through there, and Brian, I think he got scared more than anybody, though. He was the most scared person. The 31st was a haunted house and a Halloween carnival at the town hall, and that turned out real nice. A lot of great kids, a lot of great people went there. Our haunted house at the town hall is geared more towards little kids, and so they run through there about 10 times each, and that's a lot of fun to watch. So that's about all I have for today. You guys have anything?
Just a couple things on that water class. Is that a water treatment class that you're talking about?
Yeah.
That's actually, I would just like to kind of reinforce what Cliff is saying. That actually is a career building class. People who take that usually are able to sit for their, I know this is too much information, but grade 2 operator test in the state of California. And there are jobs across the state and also in Calaveras County for that kind of thing. So I would, having taken that class many years ago and taken the exam many years ago, just as something I wanted to do, I thought it was really beneficial. So lots of careers in that. Real quickly, every Wednesday and Friday, I meet with FEMA and Cal OES for an update. Cliff is joining us in those meetings. They're not very long, maybe about an hour. Kind of gives us an update, gives us a chance to say whatever our concerns are. On Mondays, we have a briefing down at the area field office. So, of course, we had one yesterday with all of the leaders, the task force leaders, as well as others that Jeff Krovitz was bringing up. And then we also have a department head meeting for Butte Fire Recovery on Thursdays down at the AFO as well. So that will be going on this week. We're not sure if we're going to continue that particular meeting beyond this week. These tend to eat 2 or 3 hours out of the day, and although there's a lot of good data exchange, maybe we're getting past that, at least on the Thursday meeting, but we'll be meeting this Thursday. And then finally, next week, my intent is to bring the hazardous mitigation plan before the board for consideration. This is very important. This is a function and part of our local OES, but we need to get that passed and updated. It's already been vetted through both FEMA and Cal OES. There's a couple things I need to add from Mr. Krovitz's shop that he just gave me yesterday, and then be working with the consultant this week to get it to the board next week. So that's what I have.
Chair, I have one additional thing. I was asked by the committee to ascertain who from the board will be attending Sheriff Coon's funeral.
I am.
Supervisor Edson, Supervisor Kearney, myself,
I will not be attending.
and,
I'm going to be seeing if I can attend that.
okay, thank you. I will advise the board. One more quick note. There has been arrangements for the folks from the county that cannot attend, that I believe in Angels Camp and in Murphy's, there'll be a stand by the curb as the procession passes with flags. So if you're interested, I believe the Pine Tree has details on that for our folks out there for public access TV. That information is going to be on the Pine Tree, and I think you can look that up and find that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Nothing for
Okay.
me.
Thank you all. Meeting adjourned.